Every insult is a trap designed to control you. The moment someone throws a sharp, stinging comment at you, they want exactly one thing: your reaction. Think about it. You are sitting in a crowded room, maybe a high-stakes corporate meeting or a tense family dinner, and someone levels an unprovoked attack at your intelligence or your character. In that split second, a massive psychological trap springs open. Your heart rate spikes, your face flushes hot, and a rush of adrenaline screams at you to strike back, to defend your honor, to hurt them as much as they just hurt you. Society tells you that if you do not fight back, if you do not match their volume and their venom, you are weak. But Stoic philosophy flips this logic on its head. The ancient thinkers understood a hidden truth that most people go their entire lives without realizing. The moment you lose your temper, you have willingly handed your leash over to your enemy. You are no longer the master of your own soul. You have become a mere puppet, dancing to the tune of their disrespect. Why would you give someone that kind of power over your mind? Why would you let a passing vibration of air dictate your emotional state and ruin your day when someone insults you? They are not stating an objective fact about your worth. They are making a desperate play for dominance because they are entirely out of control of their own minds. People who are truly happy, fulfilled, and secure do not go around trying to tear others down. An insult is nothing more than a loud confession of the speaker's own internal chaos, pain, and insecurity. If a toddler calls you a failure, you laugh because you know they do not understand reality. Why then do we give the exact same weight to the words of an angry coworker or a bitter stranger to a Stoic? Anyone who is governed by anger or malice is effectively an emotional child throwing a tantrum. If you react with anger, you step right into their trap, lowering yourself to their level and validating their toxic behavior by mirroring it. But in that crucial 1-second window between the insult and your response, you possess absolute, unyielding power. You have the choice to either step into the trap or to rise above it with a level of psychological dominance so profound that the person who insulted you ends up feeling like they just threw a pebble at a solid mountain. Your mind is your ultimate fortress, and your peace is a non-negotiable privilege that no one can ever breach unless you willingly unlock the gates from the inside. When you realize that the harsh words of others are merely subjective opinions and not actual reality, you strip those words of all their intended power. You recognize that you are completely untouchable. So, the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember that it is never a battle of wits, but a pure test of self-mastery, and the strongest person in any room is never the loudest, but the one who remains entirely calm, composed, and unshakable in the face of chaos. To achieve this unshakable state, we must understand what the ancient philosopher Epictetus called the echo principle. Imagine you are walking down a busy downtown street, and a stranger leans out of a passing car and shouts a bizarre insult at you. Do you chase the car down the block? Do you let it ruin your entire afternoon? Of course you do not. You dismiss it instantly because you know the stranger has no idea who you are. Their words are completely empty. Yet, when a coworker, a family member, or a rival delivers an insult, we suddenly treat their words as if they were undeniable facts carved into stone. Why the difference? Epictetus taught that insults are nothing more than echoes. They are entirely worthless and powerless until you choose to pay attention to them. Think about the physical reality of an insult. What is it? Really, it is nothing but a vibration of air hitting your eardrums. It has no mass, no weight, and no physical ability to cause you harm. The pain you feel does not come from the vibration of the air. It comes entirely from your own mind, choosing to accept that vibration as the truth. You are the one doing the damage to yourself. If someone calls you a failure, those words are just sounds. The suffering only begins when you tell yourself that it is terrible that they think you are a failure. If you instead tell yourself that they simply have an opinion that does not align with reality, the pain never arrives. You are the ultimate gatekeeper of your own mind. You have the absolute power to simply not feel insulted. Society conditions us to believe that if we are insulted, we are automatically victims who must defend ourselves. But the Stoic realizes that no one can force an insult upon you without your active cooperation. You have to agree with the insult for it to sting. If you refuse to catch the wind, it simply passes by. This is the profound difference between objective reality and subjective opinion. Objective reality is that you are standing in a room and someone is vibrating the air with their vocal cords. Subjective opinion is the narrative you attach to those vibrations. When you deconstruct an insult into its bare physical components, it becomes almost comical that we ever allow such a thing to dictate our heart rate or our peace of mind. By recognizing the echo principle, you stop participating in your own emotional destruction. You look at the person throwing the insult, and you realize they are just making noise. You do not argue with noise. You do not try to reason with an echo. You simply let it bounce off the walls and fade away into nothingness. The next time someone attempts to provoke you, visualize their words as mere echoes in a vast canyon. They might be loud for a brief second, but they have absolutely no substance. And if you simply remain silent and observant, they will inevitably dissipate, leaving you entirely untouched and in complete control of your personal empire. Once you understand that an insult is just an echo fading into the distance, you are ready to deploy the first active tool of psychological judo, a technique designed to disarm your opponent instantly. I call it disarmament by curiosity. Imagine a scenario where the person insulting you will not back down. Let us say you are presenting a major proposal at your company, a project you have spent weeks preparing, and a rival colleague leans back, scoffs, and says loudly in front of the entire room, "You are completely out of your depth, and you are not nearly as smart as you think you are." The standard reaction for almost everyone in that room would be immediate defensiveness. You want to snap back, to demand why they would say such a thing, or to launch a vicious counterattack. But remember, the moment you get defensive, they win the game. They are starving for your emotional reaction, seeking any indication that their words have the power to wound you. Instead of giving them what they want, you deploy a response that is so profoundly unexpected, it completely shatters their strategy. You pause. You look them directly in the eyes with a calm, unbothered expression. You give a slight smile, and you say calmly, "Interesting. Tell me more." The psychological effect of this single phrase is instantaneous and devastating. You have not engaged in a petty fight. You have simply stepped out of the way of their verbal punch and watched them stumble awkwardly forward. By expressing genuine curiosity, you flip the power dynamic in a fraction of a second. You are no longer the victim of an attack. You have elevated yourself to become the calm, untouchable observer of their behavior. You are extending an open invitation for them to keep speaking, which forces them to explain an insult that was never meant to be logical in the first place. They only wanted to provoke you, to make you feel inferior so that they could temporarily feel superior. But when you meet their aggression with quiet interest, you completely derail their aim. You take their toxic energy, absorb it, and reflect it right back onto them, exposing their true motivations to everyone watching. They are suddenly left standing there, required to provide a rational explanation for a completely irrational attack. The silence you create by doing this makes them incredibly uncomfortable. They were anticipating an immediate, heated backlash, and all they received was ice-cold composure and absolute attention. This is what the ancient Stoics meant by mastering yourself. Epictetus taught that it is not the words themselves that are offensive to you, but your choice to interpret them as an attack. If you choose to be curious rather than emotional, you negate their force entirely. You transform their insult into a magnifying glass that displays both your own unshakable power and the glaring vulnerability of the person who tried to hurt you. You prove that you place a much higher value on actual intelligence and self-mastery than you do on protecting a fragile ego. So the next time someone throws a verbal dart at you, do not catch it and stab yourself with it. Just lean in, maintain your absolute peace, and invite them to dig their own hole deeper. As the silence stretches in that meeting room, your rival realizes they have stepped into a trap of their own making, driven by the pressure of the audience and their own fragile ego. They might double down, stammering out a hasty list of your perceived flaws or repeating that your data is weak and your experience is lacking. They are desperately throwing more fuel onto the fire, hoping you will finally spark and give them the heated argument they crave. This brings us to the second devastating maneuver of psychological judo, a technique of serene acceptance that starves their fire of all oxygen. As they finish their frantic explanation, you do not launch into a defensive breakdown of your credentials, and you do not raise your voice. Instead, you look at them with complete tranquility and say, "You might be right." In those 4 simple words, you execute a flawless martial arts throw, using the entire weight of their aggression to send them crashing to the floor. By casually acknowledging the possibility of their statement without a single ounce of defensiveness, you strip the insult of its fundamental purpose. Remember that an insult only works if it finds a rigid wall of ego to crash against. When you remove the wall and replace it with empty space, the attacker simply stumbles forward, losing all their balance and authority. The Roman philosopher Seneca taught that no one can actually insult you without your internal consent. When you say that they might be right, you are not confessing to incompetence or surrendering your professional dignity. On the contrary, you are projecting an aura of supreme, unshakable confidence. You are communicating that your self-worth is so deeply rooted and so thoroughly independent of their petty evaluations that you do not even feel the need to participate in a trivial contest to prove yourself. Think about the devastating psychological effect this has on the person trying to humiliate you. They wanted to see you flush with anger. They wanted to see you scramble to justify your intelligence. But instead, they hit a barrier of pure, detached indifference. The tension in the room instantly shifts from you to them. The audience watching this exchange does not see you as weak for conceding a point. They see you as a towering figure of rational control who refuses to be dragged into the mud. You have effectively told them that their judgment is entirely irrelevant to your reality. If they continue to attack after you have calmly granted them their possibility, they no longer look like a sharp critic. They look like a desperate, irrational person fighting with a ghost. By refusing to defend yourself, you become completely untouchable. You secure your inner peace, protect your mental energy, and demonstrate to everyone present that true power is never found in the loudest rebuttal, but in the quiet, absolute mastery of the self. Now imagine that despite your calm concession, your rival is so desperate for a victory that they launch one final, louder attack, trying to shatter your composure. They raise their voice and throw another insult across the conference table. This is the exact moment to deploy the third and most devastating weapon in the Stoic arsenal. It is called tactical silence. Your biological instinct will scream at you to fill the air with a loud defense, but instead, you do absolutely nothing. You stop. You slowly count to 3 in your head. You look them directly in the eyes with a completely calm and neutral expression, and you allow a profound, heavy silence to stretch across the room. This intentional void of sound is the most uncomfortable thing an aggressor can possibly experience. By not responding immediately, you are sending a clear, nonverbal signal that their words have not even registered as a legitimate threat. You are essentially asking them, without opening your mouth, "Is that really all you have?" Human psychology naturally abhors an awkward silence. When you refuse to fill that silence with the defensive anger they are expecting, the psychological pressure instantly transfers from you directly back onto them. They anticipated a heated reaction, a shouting match, or at least a visible flinch of pain. By giving them absolutely nothing, you make them look incredibly foolish and isolated in their outburst. Their harsh words simply hang in the empty air, sounding petty and irrational even to their own ears. True silence is not a sign that you have nothing to say, nor is it a display of weakness or submission. It is a massive display of intellectual dominance. It signals to the entire room that the words of your attacker are simply not worth the oxygen it would take to answer them. While you maintain that steady, unbroken gaze, you are engaging in a quiet, internal Stoic assessment. You are asking yourself if there is any objective truth in what they just said. If there is truth, it is useful feedback, not an insult, and you can use it to improve your own work. If it is false, it is a lie, and a lie is exclusively the problem of the liar, not the person being lied about. By maintaining your tactical silence, you become an impenetrable emotional mirror, reflecting their own chaos and deep insecurity right back at them. The tension in the room becomes almost unbearable for the attacker, who will often begin to stammer, backtrack, or desperately try to explain themselves just to fill the crushing silence you have intentionally created. You have effectively neutralized their attack without lifting a finger or raising your voice a single decibel. You have proven to every single person watching that ultimate authority does not come from having the sharpest tongue, but from possessing a mind so secure that it treats the frantic hostility of others as nothing more than a passing breeze. As the uncomfortable silence forces your rival to retreat, stammering through a weak apology or awkwardly shuffling their documents, you might find yourself wondering why they launched such a bitter attack in the first place. This brings us to a profound Stoic concept known as the false mirror effect. When someone hurls an insult across a conference table or leaves a venomous comment on the internet, we are socially conditioned to believe that their words are fundamentally about us. We automatically think they are holding up a mirror to expose our deepest flaws, but the ancient Stoic philosophers recognized a brilliant psychological truth that changes everything. The mirror is actually pointing in the exact opposite direction. When that colleague attacked your intelligence and your preparation, they were not showing you your reflection at all. They were broadcasting a loud and desperate confession of their own internal chaos. Think about it logically for a moment. Truly happy, fulfilled, and secure individuals simply do not go out of their way to tear other people down. They do not have the time, the energy, or the desire to manufacture unnecessary conflict. An insult is almost always a clear symptom of a deep psychological wound. It is a direct projection of the attacker's own feelings of inadequacy, jealousy, or intense fear. They see your composure, your competence, and your steady professional rise, and it terrifies them because it highlights their own stagnation and lack of control. To cope with that unbearable discomfort, they try to drag you down into their mud so they can feel a fleeting moment of artificial superiority. Once you fully grasp the mechanics of the false mirror effect, your entire emotional response to disrespect undergoes a radical and permanent transformation. The burning anger that usually boils up inside your chest is instantly replaced by a sense of profound pity. Why would you ever feel threatened by someone who is clearly drowning in their own insecurity? If you saw a person walking down the street suffering from a severe physical fever, lashing out because they were completely delirious, you would never take their harsh words personally. You would simply recognize that they are deeply unwell. A Stoic views malicious and aggressive people in the exact same way. They are emotionally ill-equipped to handle the realities of life. They are suffering from a sickness of the mind and a lack of self-mastery. By understanding this hidden dynamic, you elevate yourself to a position of untouchable empathy and strategic dominance. You look at the person who just tried to publicly humiliate you, and instead of seeing a terrifying opponent, you see a fragile, confused individual who is entirely enslaved by their own negative emotions. This powerful realization strips their words of all remaining venom. You no longer have to build defensive walls to protect your ego, because you understand with absolute certainty that their attack was never actually about you. It was only ever about them. This is the ultimate psychological disarmament. You sit at that table, completely unharmed and perfectly tranquil, watching their hostility dissolve into nothingness. while you remain securely anchored in your own unwavering peace of mind. While you sit at that conference table watching your rival unravel in the silence you created, your mind does not go to sleep. It goes to work. You transition into the 7th phase of psychological judo, which is the process of pure data extraction. The average person hears a harsh criticism and instantly builds a mental fortress to repel it, terrified that it might pierce their armor. But the Stoic mind operates like a high-level filtration system. Instead of repelling the words, you let them pass through the filter of objective reason. You ask yourself one completely unemotional question: is there any truth to what was just said? Strip away the malicious tone, remove the volume, ignore the sneer on their face, and look only at the raw data. Suppose your rival claimed your quarterly projections were poorly researched and your methodology was flawed. Your ego wants to scream that you worked on that report for 3 solid weeks, but your Stoic filter stops the ego immediately. You examine the claim. If you realize that your data actually is missing a few critical variables, what happens? You do not feel humiliated. You feel grateful. This person, in their desperate attempt to make you look foolish, has just given you a free, highly aggressive quality assurance check. They have handed you the exact blueprint you need to make your next presentation absolutely bulletproof. You have taken their weapon and turned it into your own whetstone. You absorb the lesson, improve your strategy, and leave them with nothing but their own exhaustion. But what if you run their criticism through the filter and discover that it is completely fabricated? What if your data is flawless and their attack is just a desperate fabrication born out of jealousy? This is where your power becomes absolute. If the insult is not true, it is simply a lie. And whose problem is a lie? It is the exclusive problem of the liar. To be offended by a lie is to willingly take on a burden that belongs entirely to someone else. Why would you carry their heavy, toxic baggage? If a stranger on the street called you a green alien from Mars, you would not argue with them, because you know it is objectively false. You would just walk away. You must treat every baseless insult from your rival with that exact same level of detached amusement. It is a fundamental law of Stoic philosophy that you cannot be harmed by something that is not real. By actively extracting the data from the disrespect, you completely immunize yourself against the emotional poison. You sit there calmly, having processed their outburst into either valuable feedback for your own personal growth or meaningless noise that simply bounces off the walls. Either way, you win. You have engineered a psychological state where every attack against you only makes you smarter, sharper, and more deeply entrenched in your own unshakable authority. Now that you have extracted the objective data and completely discarded the emotional poison, the meeting eventually ends, and you return to your desk. This is where the average person makes their most fatal mistake. They spend the next 3 weeks plotting their revenge. They gossip by the water cooler. They try to sabotage their rival, and they waste thousands of hours of mental energy imagining the perfect comeback or the perfect way to get even. But the Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius offered a brilliant and entirely different strategy for this exact moment. He wrote that the best revenge is simply to be unlike him who performed the injury. Think about the profound psychological dominance embedded in that single statement. Your rival desperately wants you to become just like them. They want you to be petty, bitter, and reactive, because if you sink to their level, you validate their toxic behavior. You prove to them that their aggressive way of interacting with the world is the normal way. But when you absolutely refuse to retaliate, you deny them that validation. You leave them stranded on a lonely island of their own unprofessionalism. True revenge is never about destroying the other person. It is about elevating yourself so far above them that their actions become completely irrelevant to your reality. So, how do you practically execute this revenge of excellence? You do it by returning to your work with an unbreakable, almost terrifying level of focus. If they criticized your research or your presentation, you do not argue about it. You make your next project so undeniably flawless that even your harshest critics are forced to silently respect it. You respond to their chaos with the highest quality of work, the most polite and professional communication, and the absolute best version of your character. While they are exhausting themselves trying to play petty office politics and dragging people down, you are quietly building an empire of undeniable competence. Excellence is the ultimate silencer. It is an argument that cannot be refuted by any insult or any sarcastic comment. When you respond to blatant disrespect with magnificent performance, you force everyone else in the room, from your peers to your upper management, to compare your quiet, consistent brilliance with your rival's loud, erratic insecurity. The contrast becomes glaringly obvious. Your rival will very quickly realize that their attempts to drag you down only served as the high-octane fuel for your professional and personal elevation. You have effectively transformed their hostility into a stepping stone. By refusing to engage in their mudslinging, you protect your integrity and you maintain the absolute high ground. You prove that your authority comes from your elite output and your unshakable composure, not from engaging in trivial warfare. Do not give them the satisfaction of seeing you angry. Give them the quiet, terrifying reality of your absolute dedication to excellence. As the days turn into weeks and your undeniable excellence forces your critics into the shadows, you will begin to notice a profound shift in how you experience the entire world. You have not just survived a toxic encounter, you have fundamentally rewired your psychological operating system. This brings us to the final stage of Stoic Judo, the attainment of ultimate personal sovereignty. Imagine your mind as a vast, impenetrable fortress sitting at the peak of a massive mountain. At the bottom of this mountain, people are shouting, throwing pebbles, and waving their arms in anger. The average person lives down there in the mud, constantly reacting to every single shout, defending their fragile ego from every thrown pebble, and exhausting themselves in endless, meaningless battles. But you no longer live down there. You have relocated your consciousness to the highest tower of the fortress. When someone attempts to insult you now, you look down from your high walls and simply observe them. You realize that their words cannot possibly scale the mountain, let alone breach your gates, unless you voluntarily walk down the mountain and open the heavy doors for them. Why would you ever do that? Why would you surrender the ultimate piece of your personal empire just to engage in a petty argument with someone who is a prisoner of their own chaotic emotions? True power has absolutely nothing to do with volume, intimidation, or dominance over other people. True power is the absolute, unshakable mastery over yourself. The Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius ruled the entire known world, commanding massive legions and controlling vast treasuries. Yet he reminded himself daily that his only real authority was the authority he held over his own mind. He knew that people would be ungrateful, arrogant, and deceitful, and he accepted it as a basic biological fact of human nature, just like winter storms or summer heat. When you reach this level of emotional detachment, you stop expecting the world to be polite, and you start expecting yourself to be indestructible. You no longer walk into a corporate boardroom hoping that everyone will respect you. Instead, you walk in knowing that it is completely irrelevant whether they respect you or not, because you deeply and thoroughly respect yourself. You have built a psychological empire that does not rely on external validation, cheap compliments, or the fragile opinions of insecure colleagues. An insult is no longer a dangerous weapon that can cause you pain. It is merely a physical vibration of air, a harmless echo fading into the distance. You have successfully stripped the outside world of its ability to dictate your internal weather. So, let the loud people yell. Let the insecure people project their deepest fears. Let the desperate manipulators set their traps. You will not catch their wind. You will remain seated quietly on your throne, observing the noise with a calm smile, completely untouchable, perfectly composed, and forever the absolute master of your own unbreakable mind. The next time someone tries to test you with disrespect, remember that you hold the ultimate power. You do not have to catch their wind or step into their trap. If you found value in these Stoic strategies and want to continue building an unbreakable mind, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below with the word untouchable to show that you have mastered your reactions and claimed your personal sovereignty. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear this message. And until next time, remain calm, stay composed, and protect your peace. See you next video.